Today what we are going to be talking about is the Secure Act, and if you follow financial news at all, you'll know that recently the government just passed into law what is called the Secure Act, which stands for Setting Every Community Up for Retirement Enhancement. Don't you love government acronyms? If you want a full breakdown of every little thing that this bill actually impacts, be my guest. There are tons of websites that have done that for you already. They'll break it down and list everything. What I'm about to go through is how it will impact you. Most of the bill will not impact the everyday American whatsoever. So what we're going to look at today is how it impacts you, whether you'll be benefited by the change or not, and things that you need to know now that things have changed moving forward. Let's dive in. All right, everybody, we are going to go over the parts of the Secure Act now that they have been passed into law, how they're going to impact you. A big portion of this act was designed to basically make it easier for businesses, specifically small businesses, to offer retirement plans to their employees. What that means for you is, quite honestly, not a whole lot, because if you're an employee at a business that does not already offer it and you're making enough money to put away for retirement, you're probably using an IRA already anyway. And the vast majority of the time, an IRA that you have at a company which you choose, let's say you open up an IRA at TD Ameritrade or Vanguard or Fidelity or Charles Schwab or E-Trade, those are all going to be much better options than 99% of the employer-sponsored retirement plans that are out there. Not only do you not pay any fees for these accounts, but the vast majority of the time you're going to have a lot more investment options available to you than what you would typically get in a standard workplace retirement account. And if you're working for a company that hasn't had one of these plans before, and now under this new act and with the new encouragement from these laws, now they're going to offer it, the likelihood is it's not going to come with a match, because if they were struggling to even offer the plan in the first place, this act most likely isn't going to be enough of a game changer to, number one, cause that business to start up a plan, and number two, give them enough leeway to offer a match on top of just starting the plan in the first place. And if you're not getting a match at your workplace retirement, it makes sense to first go to an IRA and max out an individual retirement account with a brokerage firm of your choice first before going back and using your workplace retirement account. So if you're working for a company that, because of this law, decides to start offering a plan and they offer a match, well, congratulations. You're probably one of the few, and take advantage of it. Don't leave money sitting on the table that they've set aside for you as an employee. Take advantage and start putting it up to the match. The other one of the ways that they're encouraging small businesses and employers to start these accounts is by offering a tax credit and an additional tax credit if they start a plan with auto enroll. Now, there's a study done by Dan Ariely, who's worked with the government and nonprofits and organizations on human psychology, and they found that humans are much more likely to go with the preset option. If you have to check a box to either enroll in something or unenroll in something, the vast majority of the time you're not going to check that box or uncheck that box. If you're starting something, you're just going to go with the preset options the majority of the time. And so they've gone into countries and the organizations and companies and found if you have a hiring program where the 401k or retirement plan option is already selected, it's an auto enroll feature, there will be way more engagement, and most employees will just leave that box checked and they'll enroll automatically. Versus the opposite, if it's something that they have to check the box to enroll in, normally they will not. And so this is legislation that's designed to take advantage of human psychology to get more people to save and put into their retirement accounts. Ultimately, if you're already with an employer and you're already putting your money into an IRA or a 401k, again, this doesn't impact you at all. Again, this is just encouragement and a push for businesses to start helping their employees enroll in these plans. Now, it also makes it easier to allow part-time employees to participate in these workplace retirement accounts, but it's likely to not make that much of an impact nationwide, just from a numbers perspective, because if you're a part-time employee, usually you're a part-time employee for a couple of reasons. Number one, you just need to make a little bit more money for your household. You're doing it because you actually need the income. And so there's likely not that much left over in order to put away and save, especially for retirement. And so your part-time employee is not typically going to be the one who's putting away a large chunk of their paycheck into retirement accounts. And if you're one of those part-time employees that is already making a lot of money and you're choosing just to work part-time just because you don't need to work full-time, because you already make enough, you likely don't need that retirement option in the first place. So this is one of those funny things. Yeah, it might help a couple of people, but it's not a game changer. And that brings us to the next part of the bill, which is annuities. It will be a lot easier for companies to allow annuities to be included in the plan, because prior to this bill, if you were a company with a retirement account for your employees, it was your responsibility to make sure that there were no investments included in the available pool of investments that could be detrimental for your employees. And so because of that, annuities were rarely parts of retirement accounts, because annuities are extremely complex products and they are not suitable, I would say, for anybody. I would say there's probably two classes of people in this entire country that annuities are good for, and that would be lottery winners and professional athletes, because those are statistically the people who get massive windfalls, and almost all of them end up broke or worse off within just a few years after they get that lump sum. And so having somebody like that purchase an annuity where there's a guaranteed stream of income for life and they don't actually have access to that lump sum, that's probably the only class of people who an annuity is appropriate for. Other than that, locking yourself into a product with a fixed income that is already an extremely expensive product, offering you a fixed income which inflation is going to completely devastate in terms of purchasing power, I would venture to say is probably the worst idea for almost every investor out there. And so if your employer offers an annuity in their 401k plans moving forward because of this bill, stay away. You're going to be locking yourself into an investment, like I said, that is extremely expensive, and your purchasing power of those dollars that it's going to pay you will be eroded like crazy as inflation takes off into the coming years. So do yourself a favor and stay away. Next up, this is something that is actually likely to impact a lot of people, and this is they have pushed back the retirement age from 70 and a half to 72. What that meant is that if you had any money in a traditional retirement account, not a Roth, but a traditional retirement account, prior to this, you had to start taking some of your money out of this account in the year in which you turned 70 and a half. If this year in 2020 you were going to turn 70 and a half, so let's say your birthday's in February, that means you turn 70 and a half in July. That means this year you'd be required to start taking money out of your traditional retirement account. Now they push that age back to 72, which is fine. You have longer to let your money grow, but again, you're just letting your money grow and it's a traditional account. So as you take money out of the account, you're taxed on it just as ordinary income. So ultimately you're just letting that pool get bigger before you take it out and pay taxes on it. So it's not probably going to make a whole lot of difference, except for those people that are still working and want to let that grow a little bit longer before they actually start using it for retirement. They don't want to start taking from their nest egg before they really wanted to start doing that. Now, the reason cited for this is pretty funny. The reason cited for making this change is that people are living longer and so they're working longer. Now, I know I'm probably about to say something that is going to sound like heresy, but people are not actually living longer. Okay, fine. People are living a little bit longer than they used to, but it has not changed drastically. On average, people are living longer. But today, if you live to age 70, you're likely to live until you're 85. 150 years ago, if you lived to age 70, you were likely to live until you were 80. And this is how life expectancy works. If you live to a certain age, they have a statistical estimation on the next age that you are likely to live to. And this is where the data gets skewed. Child mortality, because child mortality rates have dropped to almost nothing, but child mortality rates are taken into the total average expected lifespan. I know this is a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's super interesting because people talk about the statistics about how much longer we're living now than we used to, medical advancements, technology, and the need to rethink and replan for retirement and investing and all of our laws. And they say, yeah, 150 years ago, the average expected lifespan was 40 years old. And pretty soon it's going to be 85 and 90 and 95. When in reality, almost the entire reason that our life expectancy is actually going up is just because we're fixing the child mortality rates. There's less children dying, and so there's less children skewing that average down. But the reality is, in the last 150 years, we've only added an extra 5 years onto life expectancy. So I reject the notion that it is strictly because of the length of our lives that these laws are changing, that we have to rethink this. No, people are working longer. And that is a very different thing than people living longer. Because 50 years ago, people were not working as long. 50 years ago, people were working one job and then retiring and living off of that income for the rest of their lives. And they could afford to do that because they had wages that kept up with the cost of living, and they made enough to put away and retire and invest in a way that would sustain them for the rest of their life. And that's just not happening anymore. People are working longer, not because they're wanting to, because they have to. How many of you watching right now would quit your job if you could afford it? Everyone, right? Unless you're Will Smith from Bad Boys, you're a trust fund kid, you're just doing your job because you absolutely love it so much. That's not the normal case. People work because they need to make a living, and people work longer now because they can't afford to retire. Okay, enough with that tangent. We're on to the next point. In addition to pushing back the age that you are required to start taking money out of your retirement account, they eliminated the age cap on putting money in. What this means is that you can just continue to put money into your retirement account. You're not required to stop putting money in at any certain point. Again, they cite the reason that people are living longer and working longer, and so they want to be able to continue to put into their retirement account. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that the government is allowing people to choose if they want to put money into their retirement account or choose to wait longer to take money out. I just think the reasons that they're citing for doing so are a little bit deceptive. All right, the next thing that the Secure Act changes is not really related to retirement, it's related to education, and that is 529 accounts are going to be able to be used towards student loan balances up to $10,000. Now, this is another one of those things that's probably not going to make that much of a difference for either the total student loan debt burden that we're sitting under or any individual. Because let's take a step back. Let's say you graduate from college with an average $30,000 of student debt. How much money do you think you have left in your 529 account? Any? Why would you have $30,000 student loan debt if you had any money left in your 529? Or on the flip side, let's say you graduate from college and there's $20,000 left in your 529 account. Do you think you're going to have any student debt? Honestly, who is this meant for? Who is this going to affect? This was thrown into the Secure Act just so that they could say they're passing legislation to try and do something about the total student debt issue. All right, next one. The 401k changes allow you to withdraw money from your 401k to help pay for child expenses. If you have a child this year or you adopt a child, you can take money out of your 401k to help with those expenses. Brilliant. Just kidding. Don't do this. It's not a good idea. Again, not a game changer here. If you can take out $5,000 from your retirement to pay for child expenses, number one, that means that you've had enough to start putting money away into your 401k. Number two, you've had 9 months if you just went through the normal process of regular childbirth. And if you go through the adoption process, you've probably had like 2 years to prepare for this. And if you don't have the foresight to just save up some money instead of putting money into your 401k for this, then there are bigger issues at play. If this is a game changer for you, there's bigger issues that we need to talk about here. But ultimately, let's say this is that MTV or TMZ show or whatever that show was where it's a surprise childbirth and people don't know they're pregnant until they're actually giving birth. Is that even real? I don't know. Let's say that's you. And let's say that you also have a couple $1,000s in your retirement account that you didn't actually put in there yourself. That was just an auto enroll feature that the company set up for you. They're putting in some of their own money from the match and some of your money that you didn't really choose to. It just started accumulating there, and you have no spare money other than what's in your 401k. And by all means, it's a game changer for you. But how many of you are there? Look, if you're gonna have a kid, save up. Don't take from your retirement account for it. You have 9 months to 2 years to prepare for this. Your retirement account, you're taking seeds that are gonna plant trees that are gonna become an orchard. Don't take from that. Let that grow. Have a little bit of separate discipline. Put some money away outside of your retirement account. As you know, you're gonna have a kid soon. And last on the list, bad news for heirs. Now, I'll be honest, this is probably the one that the vast majority of people are not crying about unless you have rich parents. The fact that we even have an inheritance or an estate tax, that's a topic for an entirely different video. Obviously, if you've been around the channel at all, you can probably guess my thoughts on that to begin with. So ultimately, this is just a money grab by the government. They had to do something to be able to get this pushed through because it was bipartisan, and if it was looking like it was just going to blow up the deficit of the budget and the debt even more without anything paying for it, it probably wouldn't have gotten pushed through, so they had to include this to say, hey, this is how we're going to pay for it. Ultimately, it's going to be a drop in the bucket. It's really not going to pay for anything because we're not paying for anything as a country anymore. We're just blowing up the deficit that's adding to our national debt, and the Federal Reserve is printing money to pay for all that debt. But if you are not a spouse and you are inheriting money in a retirement account, you are no longer going to be able to stretch the distributions of that account throughout your life. You're going to be required to distribute the entire account within 10 years of inheriting it. Now, I said most people are not going to cry about this unless it's you that's doing the inheriting, because ultimately, if there's enough money in that account that it's bumping you into a high tax bracket for each year that you're taking money out of this account, then there's a lot of money coming to you anyway, so nobody's crying for you, except me. I think you should be able to keep all that money. What are we at, like quadruple taxation at this point? Okay, one more tangent. I promise this is the last one. If we really wanted to do something about stopping so much wealth from passing hands and staying in the same family and going from generation to generation and falling into the hands of the elites, why do we have Medicare? We already have Medicaid. Medicare is simply a socialized healthcare program that subsidizes inheritances. Medicaid is needs-based. Fold Medicare into Medicaid, and then all these old people who have tons of money would have to spend it on their healthcare. Then there wouldn't be these large inheritances to pass on in the first place. We're subsidizing inheritances through Medicare. That's taxpayer dollars helping rich people pass on money to their kids. And then if you're an old person and you run out of your money because you spent it all on healthcare, well, there's Medicaid now. It's needs-based. You're already going to qualify for Medicaid. So if we really cared about intellectual honesty and integrity with our policymaking and our decisions, the same people that are crying foul at all these large inheritances would be the same people saying that we should get rid of Medicare. But I digress. I promise that was the last tangent. Those are the ways that the Secure Act is changing retirement accounts and laws that are going into effect. Ultimately, it's not a game changer. The only way it'll really affect you is, number one, does your employer now start offering you a retirement plan and they didn't before? And again, the only way that should affect you is if they offer a match. Because if they don't offer a match with that, you should still go max out your IRA before you go back to your workplace retirement account. There's no reason to go to your workplace retirement account if you're not first maxing out an IRA unless you actually have a match on it. The hierarchy goes like this. Get your full match first, then go to an IRA, then go back to your workplace retirement account. If you don't get a match, you move that off and you go to an IRA first, and then you go to your workplace retirement account. The other way this will affect you is if you're nearing retirement age, you can continue to contribute into your traditional retirement account if you're still working, regardless of how old you get, and you don't have to start taking money out of your retirement account until you're 72 now. If it's a traditional account, if it's a Roth, you never have to take money out if you don't want to. I hope this video was helpful. If it was, please hit that like button for the YouTube algorithms. I would really appreciate it. And really, I thank you all for watching and hanging in there. It means a lot to me. You have a great day.